Somewhere in rural Argentina, a farmer sells his wheat, not in pesos, in dollars. In Vietnam, a factory owner pays for imported steel, dollars. In Nigeria, a family sends money home from London. They convert it to dollars first, then to naira. The dollar is not just America's currency. It is the world's operating system, and almost nobody chose that. It just happened. Here is the uncomfortable part. The U.S. makes up roughly 25% of global GDP, but over 85% of international trade is invoiced in dollars. Over 60% of foreign exchange reserves held by central banks around the world are in dollars. That gap is not an accident. It is a mechanism, and once you see how it works, you cannot unsee it. Go back to 1944. World War II is still happening, but the Allies can already smell the end. 44 countries send delegates to a resort in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. The question on the table is simple. After the war, what holds the global economy together? They needed a shared anchor, something everyone trusted. Gold was the obvious choice, but you cannot fly gold across borders every time you settle a trade. So they made a deal. Every currency in the world would be pegged to the dollar, and the dollar alone would be pegged to gold at $35 an ounce. America had most of the world's gold anyway. It worked. Then, in 1971, Nixon ended the gold peg unilaterally. No vote, no global summit, just an announcement on a Sunday evening. The dollar was now backed by nothing. Economists called it the Nixon Shock. The rest of the world, many of them furious, made a quiet calculation. Yes, the dollar was no longer backed by gold, but it was backed by the United States military, the U.S. Treasury bond market, and the fact that oil was already priced in dollars. That last part is the key. In the early 1970s, the U.S. cut a deal with Saudi Arabia. Sell your oil in dollars, only dollars. In exchange, America would offer military protection and buy Saudi debt. The petrodollar system was born. And since every country on earth needs energy, every country on earth suddenly needed dollars, not to trade with America, to trade at all. This is the exorbitant privilege, a phrase France coined in the 1960s, not as a compliment. Because here's the math that nobody really talks about. When the U.S. runs a deficit, it borrows, it issues treasury bonds, and the rest of the world buys them eagerly. Because dollars are the reserve currency, there is always demand for U.S. debt. That means America can borrow more at lower interest rates than any other country on earth. It is like being the only casino in town that also prints the chips. Now, some countries have been trying to change this. China has been pushing the yuan for years. The BRICS nations floated the idea of a shared currency. Russia settled some trades in rubles after sanctions. Each time, the headlines screamed the death of the dollar. Each time, nothing much happens. Why? Because switching reserve currencies is not a financial decision. It is a trust decision. And trust, built over 80 years of institutions, legal frameworks, and the deepest capital markets in human history, does not transfer quickly. But here is where it gets interesting. The U.S. debt is now over $34 trillion. The interest payments alone are approaching $1 trillion a year. At some point, even a reserve currency has to answer for its math. Not today, maybe not this decade, but the privilege is not unconditional. It is contingent on the world continuing to believe that America is stable, predictable, and solvent enough to be trusted with their reserves. The dollar still rules the world, not because it is the best option, but because nobody has built a better one yet. And the question worth sitting with is this: what happens when someone does?